Hello everyone, I'm Keenan47, aka Wolfkeen. And here it is, guys. This is the big one. Today, I'm going to be talking about my favorite and least favorite episodes of Season 2 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. So let's do this, guys. This is Wolfkeen's top 5 favorite and top 5 least favorite episodes of My Little Pony Season 2. The rules are pretty much the same like last time. These episodes will be judged on an overall enjoyment factor. On the best episodes, like, my favorites, I will be talking about how much I enjoyed these episodes and also how much they personally affect me or personally relate to me. While in the least favorite category, or worst if you want to say it, I'm going to be talking about the episodes that piss me off, anger me, or just have too many mistakes that I just cannot let go. And just for the sake of this video alone, I will be taking advice from ANY Pony, or ANY Entertainment. He told me that I should try for an alternating style while doing my top 5 this time around. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'll be alternating between top 5 favorite and top 5 least favorite, and you will see a number change. So if you see a green number like this, that means favorite. If you see a red number like that, that means least favorite. So that way you know what whether I'm talking about a favorite or a least favorite, or you can just listen to my demeanor. So anyways, let's get started with one of my favorite episodes of Season 2.
Number 6.
This was a painful choice, but there were so many good episodes of Season 2 that I had to make some very, very painful cuts. And this was one painful cut that I wish I could have put higher. I'm talking about Sisterhooves Social, written by Cindy Morrow. Sisterhooves Social, I really wanted to put higher on this list. I wanted to put it as like number 4 or something like that. But after really considering it, I found the next 5 episodes to be better in my eyes. At least personally better. Sisterhooves Social, I love this episode because I'm a younger brother to my sister who's older than me. And I understand the conflict that Sweetie Belle and Rarity go up against. Hell, I kind of do a little bit of what Rarity does with my nephew as well, so it's a conflict that that me and my sister went through, and it's something that me and my nephew go through on a constant basis, where you don't really take into consideration your younger siblings' wants and desires, and you really only think about yourself at times, even when your sibling is trying their best to, be with you, spend time with you, and other stuff like that. I understand this emotion with my sister, and my nephew does the same with me, so it's a lesson that I'm learning. Like, the lesson that Rarity learns in this episode, it's one that my sister learned, and it's one that I'm learning personally. Because, honestly, this episode really is good in many aspects. Because I love the dynamics between Rarity and Sweetie Belle, the sister, aspects. Not to mention, I did like some of the interactions that Sweetie Belle had with the apples, learning what it really means to be a sister. Hell, I still laugh at this line from Rarity. What? Seriously, it sounds like Vince McMahon. And not to mention, I did like what Rarity decided to do at the end by basically disguising herself so she could do the race with Sweetie Belle. All in all, really good episode. I really wish I could put it higher. I really do.
Number 6.
We're starting off this list pretty strong, considering that Megan McCarthy is only at number 6. Number 6 is Hearts and Hoofs Day by Megan McCarthy. I know I originally said in my vlog that I probably was not going to add this to my least favorites list. Well, there really wasn't a lot of other episodes that I wanted to put on the list, so this episode made it. Though, like I said, 6 means that it did not make it. Like, it barely made it. So, Hearts and Hoofs Day, my only gripe with it is the baby talk, which really annoys the crap out of me, and the romance story. I mean, I'm not a fan of romantic stories. I'm not a shipper or anything like that. And honestly, the baby talk annoyed me a lot of the time. Don't get me wrong, this episode has some good humor behind it, which is why it's only my number 6. And it's not a bad episode. It's structurally sound. This episode is, I guess the best word is passable. This episode is passable. But for me, it's really, really cheesy at times. And I kind of never want to watch this episode again. Can you blame me?
Number 5.
We're going 2 for 2 now. Family Appreciation Day, written by Cindy Morrow. This episode I like a lot because I'm a huge fan of mythos and history. I am a huge history nerd, and I'm a huge mythos fan. So when I heard that they were going to be doing an episode about the founding of Ponyville in some cases, I was like, you know what, I'm interested to see this. And what's interesting about this episode is the fact that Granny Smith is the integral role in this story. When I first saw Granny Smith, I thought they really weren't going to do much with her. But this episode proved otherwise. This episode proved that you can do something with an old character like this. Like, show a character to be, like, someone influential and powerful, but at the same time not seen that way on first appearances. Like Big Daddy Reaper from Project Horizons. When Blackjack first meets Big Daddy Reaper, he looks like an old pony that can barely hold himself up. But then when Blackjack when she falls for the act, he ends up putting her in a freaking, like, you know, like an arm twist like that. That's what I like. I love characters like this that are old and look like they could be easily beaten, but in reality, they're probably the toughest, you know, characters in the entire story. I just love how they made Granny Smith like this integral role of being the founder of Ponyville. And not to mention, I love how they were able to weave the Zap Apples into it. Because when I first saw the Zap Apples, I was like, what is the point of these? And then when they showed that it's thanks to these Zap Apples that we've been seeing the entire episode, that Ponyville was founded, it makes them more important to Zap Apples. It's not just like some weird cosmic apple or anything like that. No, it's the integral reason why Ponyville was founded and why it is what it is. So all in all, fantastic episode on this front. I just wish I could have put it higher.
Number 5.
Baby Cakes, written by Charlotte Fullerton. Now, I'm not going to lie, this episode was higher on my list originally. This episode was like number 4 on my list. But after I talked with a couple of the analysts in the Rift Cafe, more specifically Golden Fox and Keyframe, I did come to the conclusion that this episode's not as bad as I was making it out. Because I rewatched it a few times, and I will say that, yeah, this episode's not as bad as I made it out before. But I still can't help but say I don't like this episode. I don't hate it, but it's an episode that really bugs me. And it's only because of one simple fact. Its logic is a little flawed. Keyframe and Golden Fox did make the argument that babies have raw potential. Okay, fine, maybe I could see that, but I still can't let it go how they were able to fly like masters and use magic like masters. It just seemed a little far-fetched. Like, I'm sorry to say, but that was one instance that I could not suspend my disbelief. And I can suspend my disbelief pretty far. So yeah, that's the only reason why I don't like this episode. I just couldn't suspend my disbelief all that much. Otherwise, it had a good moral behind it. Can't say much else but that.
Number 4.
In the words of ANY Entertainment, Best Writer Strikes Again. Ponyville Confidential by M.A. Larson. There's a lot of analysts who don't like this episode, and it's within reason. People find, the punishment with the CMCs to be mean-spirited. People find, some of the concepts to be a little out there. And not to mention, people hate this episode solely on the fact that Diamond Tiara plays a main role in the story. I respectfully disagree on all 3 fronts. The reason why I say that is because the CMCs deserve the punishment that they got because of how far they went. Think about it. If you had someone spread gossip on you and ruin your reputation, you would be willing to do whatever it takes to get back at them or something like that. Or you would probably just shun them for who knows how long. Not to mention, I don't find, too much of this to be mean-spirited in many cases. They deserved what they deserved, if you think about it. Okay, fine, I can somewhat understand the Diamond Tiara aspect, but I really feel like that Diamond Tiara was written at her best in this episode. And not to mention, I like this episode because this was one of the few times the CMCs were focused on a task. Instead of just trying to do massive random crap to get their cutie marks, they actually focused on one aspect, showing that they can and will focus when they feel it's necessary. And I like this aspect of the CMCs because the CMCs are not idiots. They're not stupid. They're not dumb. They are very smart. They can be very tenacious. They can be very determined. They can be very ingenious. That's the way I like the CMCs. I don't like them to be idiots, cutie mark obsessive, or anything like that. So this episode brought them out in a really good light, and not to mention, it had plenty of funny jokes in this episode. I mean, hell, I made a few of my Ponyville Confidential vlogs, so go check it out.
Number 4.
May the Best Pet Win, also by Charlotte Fullerton. Oh boy, I think I see a trend, guys. Okay, the reason why I don't like this episode, and I know a lot of people do like this episode, I think Rainbow Dash is the worst pet owner ever. I mean, seriously, the way that she treated her pets is like if they were in the military or something like that. Or, I don't know, like some kind of boot camp. I don't like that. I'm a pet owner. I've trained 3 dogs, 5 dogs because I was in a special program called ECAT, and I also have been around 2 cats, which are well, actually 3. But you get what I'm trying to say, guys, is that I've been around several animals throughout my life. I know how to handle animals. I understand Rainbow Dash being inexperienced, but you would think that she would have at least the basic idea of having a pet. No, instead she turned this into a whole contest. And not to mention, this episode was painfully obvious when its pet who was going to be Rainbow Dash's pet. I mean, seriously, this, like, Fluttershy just puts a tortoise out there. Like, I'm just going to put this tortoise out there for no flipping reason. And I'm just like, why is this so obvious? And hell, they even had a different title called The Tortoise and the Mare, saying that was too spoilery. Like the original, like, you know, put in that scene is not spoilery. I mean, seriously. And not to mention, some of these pets almost get injured. I mean, seriously. She gets these animals injured badly. One gets stuck on a cactus. One almost gets eaten by Cory Eel. And this freaking tortoise gets the butt of so many jokes that I hate it. Like, this bugged me. And like I said, I hate that it was painfully obvious. Basically saying like, hey, Rainbow Dash is going to have a turtle.
Tortoise.
Whatever!
Number 3.
All aboard the Cindy Morrow train! Read It and Weep by Cindy Morrow. This episode has so many relatable things. I know you're about to say, how is this episode relatable? One reason. I'm a huge fan of adventure stories. Like, huge fan of adventure stories. I mean, seriously, I have all 3 Uncharted games. I'm a huge Uncharted fan. I have the rebooted Tomb Raider game. I've played all the Tomb Raider games. I've seen all of the Indiana Jones movies. I am a huge adventure nut. So when I heard that they were going to be doing a parody of Indiana Jones with the Daring Do story, I found it to be exceptionally cool. Because if you ask me, this is where I really felt like this was an episode that non-bronies should check out. Read It and Weep is an episode I really feel like that non-bronies should check out because of the message that it has. Don't knock something before you try it. And I love the idea of it having 2 stories and they work cohesively. Because if you think about it, they have the Daring Do plot where it's an adventure story, and then they have the Rainbow Dash story, which is also its own, you know, they both work. Both stories work very well, and they coincide with each other very well, too. I especially love to see where Rainbow Dash is reenacting the very beginning of the Daring Do story, trying to get out of the hospital with the book. I found that to be funny as hell. So overall, like, this episode is amazing, and I would definitely recommend this as a first episode for non-bronies or bronies unsure about watching the show. If you're an adventure nut like me, you're going to love this episode. If you're into these kind of stories like Indiana Jones and stuff like that, you're going to love this episode. So I'd recommend this for any non-brony to getting into the show, or brony, or, you know, newly watched, you know, people that just started watching the show. This is a good episode to get into, and especially for that moral at the end.
Number 3.
Damn it, Amy! Really? Damn it, Amy! I really did not want to put you on this list, but I have to. Cutie Pox. This episode is just painful. It's not, you know, bad per se, but the problem with this episode is that it's nothing but senseless filler. I know you're about to say, wait a minute, you had senseless filler more than you do Rainbow Dash acting like a dick to her pets? Yeah, I do. Normally, I'm okay with filler, as long as it's interesting or something like that. This filler is not interesting. This episode has about 12 minutes, maybe 14 minutes worth of filler, while the rest of the other parts of the episode are just not... It's like we get 8 minutes of story and 14 minutes worth of filler. And I feel like that's stupid as hell, because if you were to take away all the filler in this episode, this would not be as long as most short cartoons. And that's pretty bad. And not to mention, I don't really like the concept behind this. Apple Bloom gets this disease that causes her to get random cutie marks that make her do the talents of those cutie marks. And not to mention, this episode's just boring. This episode is boring. It has no reason to exist. It shouldn't exist. In my mind, it doesn't exist. What was I talking about again?
Number 2.
Best Writer does what Best Writer does. The Return of Harmony by M.A. Larson. This is my favorite two-parter. This is right now my favorite two-parter pilot because of one reason. Discord. Discord, voiced by John Delancey, is by far one of the greatest villain characters I've seen in children's media. And to be honest, I think he's one of the best villains overall. Like, I've seen villains in video games and other stuff like that, and Discord is just one of those villains that I just love. He reminds me so much of Shea Gorath and the Riddler. The reason why I say he reminds me of Shea Gorath is because Shea Gorath has the power to destroy the world. He has the power to basically f*** with the world if he wanted to, but he doesn't choose to. Instead, he decides to play a game with his power. That's what Discord is. He can take over the entire world if he wanted to with a snap of his finger. Instead, he just decides to have as much fun as possible. Like a couple of the analysts said, he's like a child with too much power. Well, that's pretty much on the spot. Not to mention what I really love about this episode is it shows how fragile friendship can be if you allow yourself to become, like, assuaged from your element. Or, like in Fallout Equestria, in some cases, your virtue. It shows that if you go against your virtue or your element, like what makes you you, you could end up losing everything you've had. Your friends, your family, everything. This episode had a really good moral behind it, had a great villain behind it, and it just had a great story overall. So what can top it?
Number 2.
Okay, now we're getting into the actual the actual bad episodes of this season. This one is Dragon Quest, written by Meriwether Williams. I can sum it up just like my description. Great concept, but a horribly flawed execution. This episode had a great potential for mythos, especially to give us the mythos of the dragons. This episode basically talks about Spike going to the dragon migration to learn more about himself. This would have been a great self-reflection, not to mention finding your place story, not to mention a great mythos building of the dragons of Equestria. Instead, what do we get this episode? Garble and his teenage gang of dragons. That's it. Like, I don't like this episode for those specific reasons. Not to mention, Spike gets punished way too much in this episode. From getting thrown into a rock, from getting freaking belly flopping into lava, to losing King of the Horde, to nearly getting scorched by phoenixes, to nearly getting beat up by the teenage dragons. He gets needlessly picked on for no reason, and I don't like that. Okay, fine, it makes him out to be determined, but they did that perfectly in the scene of him going to the dragon migration. I just feel like that they failed in so many aspects with this episode. But then again, this episode did yield one of the funniest lines of all time.
They got away! I hate that!
I love that line so much. But I f***ing hate this episode.
Number 1.
There's no contest, guys. There is no contest what my number 1 is. And I'm pretty sure you know why it's my number 1. Lesson 0 by Megan McCarthy. This episode fixed every problem I had with the first season. Every problem I had with the first season. My biggest problem with the first season was that Twilight was shoehorned into every episode. And even though other characters were learning lessons, Twilight was mainly the only one writing the letters. And I found that to be right bullcrap in many cases. This episode fixed that. Where at the end of the episode, Twilight and her friends were told that they all are supposed to write friendship letters to Celestia, but when and only when they figure it out. I talked about this in more detail in my vlog and in my overview. So honestly, there's not much else I could say on this episode besides it fixed all the problems I had with Season 1, and not to mention it also fixed a lot of things that I wanted out of the second season. This was an amazing episode. And don't even get me started on the Psycho Twilight. I swear to God, I'm still having nightmares from, Twilight's little thing. Twilight, Why are you so scary?
Number 1.
This episode was terrible. This episode was an assassination. This episode made me lose love for a character. And I can't see much defense for this episode. I'm talking about Putting Your Hoof Down by Meriwether Williams and the story by Charlotte Fullerton. Now, I got my facts wrong in my vlog. What I mean by this is that Charlotte Fullerton was the one who did the story for the episode, but because of an event, Meriwether took control of the episode and basically did the story. You know, like you wrote it out and everything. The problem is with this episode is one simple fact. It makes Fluttershy into a heel. I don't like that. I understand that we wanted to see an episode of Fluttershy, you know, like standing up for herself, putting her hoof down, figuratively speaking. And we wanted to see her actually defend herself, like actually stop being a doormat. I understand this, but it's the approach that they have with this episode that really bugs me in many cases. Fluttershy assassinated her friend's reasons for living. She basically insulted their reasons for living. I don't mind that she called Pinky simple-minded and Rarity petty. That would have been fine if they ran off crying after those two lines. But no, they decided to go one further by adding that line, basically saying that no pony gives a flying feather about their reasons for living. And then the episode tried to blame Iron Will for why Fluttershy was acting like this. You can't do that! Unless we saw Iron Will actually doing this. Look, here's the thing. Who's at fault? The one who taught you this stuff or the one actually doing it? That's the problem that people seem to forget about this episode. Iron Will did not tell Fluttershy to do all this. Iron Will can only teach Fluttershy what she needs to learn. It's how she implements it is what's important. And how she implemented it was beyond crazy. I mean, hell, Iron Will has been shown to be a very respectful character and a character that I would love to see return. But the way that they made him out in this episode, it's like they even made him to be respectful. So it bugs me to no end when characters are assassinated like this. Honestly, if you ask my honest opinion, I really feel like that this episode assassinated Fluttershy's character and made me hate this character for a while before she finally regained my respect in Hurricane Fluttershy. This episode is abysmal. I hate this episode so much. If you like this episode, fine. But you can't deny the fact that Fluttershy being like this to her friends is, like, okay. There is no way anybody can say that's okay. Like I said, if it ended with her saying that they were petty or something like that, then I can understand it. Hell, what would have been better is if they freaking, after Fluttershy, you know, like, insulted her friends, maybe she walked through Ponyville and the ponies were scared of her. That would have given out the idea of what she was doing is wrong. Honestly, this is one of my least favorite episodes of Season 2, and is one of my least favorite episodes of the entire series. And that's being honest. And that's it, guys. That's the end of my top 5 favorite and least favorite episodes of Season 2 of My Little Pony. I hope you enjoyed the list, and go ahead and leave a comment down below on your thoughts on my top 5 favorite and least favorite episodes. If you have a list of top 5 favorite and least favorite episodes of My Little Pony Season 2, go ahead and leave a comment down below or a video down below. Go ahead and post your link down below, and I will check it out. Not much else for me to say here, guys. So until next time, I'm Keen47, aka Wolfkeen. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, guys, take care.